Roché. We're at the Galactic Collaboration Summit, and we're talking about managing Office 365 Teams growth and what that means in terms of governance and accelerating that process to enable remote working. A couple of people are going to talk to you today. My name is Stephen Hennessy. I'm a sales engineer at AvePoint. I've been working with Office 365 and Microsoft Azure for a number of years now, so I've got a bit of experience. I've previously worked at Microsoft, so I've had quite a lot of experience in transitioning across to Office 365 and dealing with some of the challenges that come with it. And I'm ashamed to say about 20 years of IT experience. So in a good way, that's a lot of experience. In a bad way, that shows my age a little bit. But I'm going to pass over to my colleague to introduce himself. Roché, how are you?
Hey, thanks, Stephen. So hi, I'm Roché Mahomedradja, also a sales engineer at AvePoint. And actually, also, it's funny, also 20 plus years in the IT industry. I've had a lot of experience with SharePoint, started as a SharePoint admin, and also then eventually, we all know, Office 365, if you pop to SharePoint, is a big part of it. So yeah, obviously Office 365 now, and yeah, also in the infrastructure. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Yeah, back to you, Stephen.
Most people would ask, why do I need to govern Microsoft Teams? And I think back to working in organizations that had deployed Teams, and I was part of those organizations, where there weren't any controls in place. And what I found very quickly was lots of teams were created. Content wasn't really considered whether it was being shared externally or not. There was no talk of life cycle, whether that team needed to exist for a certain amount of time. There was no real ownership of those teams. So I found myself a member of 200 teams at one point, and looking at it, I was thinking, what's relevant in all this? I can't remember what team is important to me.
Yeah.
That's common with our customers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've also seen customers where they just leave every team that was created there because simply they don't know if they can delete the data. Some user put some documents and they're not sure if it's like a threat if they delete it. You don't want to hear the next day, yeah, you deleted the most important documents of the company or something like that, because people are just saving data everywhere. And if you don't know what the purpose is of a team or why some of the documents, what kind of content is in it, I can imagine as an admin, you're not going to open up all these documents in all these thousands of teams that there are created to find out, is this something I can delete? Should I archive it? And even if you open it, sometimes the content, it might not say a lot to you because you're not an expert on the matter. So it is a pretty tricky thing. So yeah, that really sums up or focuses on why you need to govern this actually.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're doing here is asking questions, right, that you may not have considered previously about. Here we're kind of outlining what a good Teams implementation looks like. So if it's repeatable and consistent, that's good from a user perspective, and also from an operational and service level perspective. If it's repeatable and consistent, it's probably not going to break. If you automate things as much as possible, and you've got approval processes that are not difficult, then that consistency builds confidence. It means the services are available much more readily. The other piece is around administrative efficiency. So if you take away that having to think about provisioning resources or having to think about data management of those resources, and if you automate that and make it a self-service, that improves efficiency so that users, IT decision makers, IT leaders, and leaders in the business can just concentrate on running their business rather than worrying about how to manage the team's ecosystem and the team's governance layers that go with it. We've also put up there cataloging and monitoring. Roché, anything there jump out at you in terms of importance?
No, what I actually want to thinking about is the viewers might now be thinking about, this is cool, what we can do all these things, but how do we actually get to this step? How do we get from the on-governance to the governance? What should we think about? So I was just thinking about it. So basically, it comes down to actually you making the right setting the guidelines. So how are you going to use Teams, for instance? This is where it all starts with. And then you also plan, when are you going to use these Teams? And on top of that, how can you automate this? So basically, you're making it as easy as possible for the end users, for everyone who's using Teams, to actually do the right thing. So this is actually tying it all together. And of course, in this last step, automating it, this is which the part is where we're aiming at now. But I mean, think about it, making these guidelines, when you're going to use it, how are you going to use Teams? That's easy, but how are you going to enforce them? This is where the part where we're now focusing on with automation. And I see, Steven, you're already lighting up the features you can all enable when you, for instance, start up a team.
Yeah, and these are just kind of some examples that we've put up, because really the world is your oyster when you think about governance. You can be as complex or as simple as you want to be with this. The starting point, I suppose, is around company policy and data and information management policy. So if we look at external sharing as an example, a lot of our customers and teams will just switch that off because they don't really want to share content within Teams externally without some layer of control. So what you'll find is individuals can't really collaborate outside the organization because of that fear by the organization. So that's an important one. If you can find a way to enable external sharing that's in line with policy, and maybe there's an approval required for that, then that ticks a box. It means you've not just enabled collaboration internally, but suddenly you can expand way beyond that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I just want to point out, this would tie into what I was saying, like, okay, when are you going to use external sharing? You made a plan within the company. We're only using it for maybe certain departments if they need to collaborate on working on, I don't know, a sales document or any document that they have to share externally, marketing documents. And maybe you only enable this external sharing then for this specific team and not company-wide. So these are all, when are you going to use what? How are you going to use it? And then finding the way into automating all of this. The naming conventions we were already talking about, classification, having the right classification based on the sensitivity there. And yeah, this user surface, enabling it exactly for the users that need to have these functions. Because, I mean, if you don't need to share data externally, why enable it for you? It's only a bigger risk of getting data outside of the company, I would say.
Yeah, exactly right. So when we engage with our customers, what we try to do is spark the conversation around what's possible initially, but also get some idea of what the policies that the organization might have. So as you said, Roché, sometimes external sharing is not appropriate for some organizations, and in that case, yes, just switch it off. But sometimes you could have different departments or different geographies within an organization that want to be treated differently. For example, legal might need to be able to collaborate externally, but accounts probably don't. That's just an example. So what we do generally is try to get the customer thinking about some use cases, right? So in this scenario, we're looking at something like a project team, and this project team should not share externally. The teams that they create are normally project focused, so they're going to have a life cycle. They're going to have an endpoint, you would hope, and we can put policies in place that recertify members of that team every 3 months to make sure that the people who are participating in it are the right people and that they're still active. And the last piece is the classification. So we can tag the content or the team itself to let the business know and let our systems know that this is confidential information and should be treated that way. We won't go through all of these, Roché, but what we're breaking down is different departments with different requirements and different policies around sharing, exploration and certification, etc.
Yeah, and what really jumps out, because if you think about it, there's a lot of ways how you can provision your teams already and choose some settings, but it's exactly this picture where you provision it based on the needs. So for every department, or even within departments, maybe can be at Azure AD groups or something, but it's also tying directly the recertification options like the members, the permission, things like that, and also the life cycle, saying how long does this element needs to exist? Because this is obviously something that's missing a lot of times. It's the management and the aftercare. Like, are we going to archive it? Are we going to delete it? After how many months? It could be indeed, if it's a project, after 6 months, you want to archive it. Or you need to extend if a project maybe it didn't finish in time. You just need to extend that expiration date. So these are really the things that you can see now are actually part of the reason why a lot of teams are just being created and it's keeping all this data. People are leaving in organizations or they're changing job within the company, and this team is not relevant for them anymore, and they leave the team, so it just stays there. Yeah, that's something I just wanted to like highlight on this part.
Sure. So we'll talk a little bit about our flows and how we help our customers think about the provisioning and the management of Microsoft Teams as an example. So what we provide is software that manages the environment from a governance perspective. So if we just go back briefly to external sharing as an example, with Microsoft Teams, you can switch on and off external sharing, but you have to do it for the entire organization. So what that means is it makes it difficult for external collaboration because you have to perform IT tasks to make that happen. So it's exception based. So it can be a little bit difficult, and we want to make it as simple as possible. So the guiding principles are across the top of this slide, where we say we want to have self-service enablement. We want users to be able to create their own teams and manage the content of those teams. When we talk about balance controls, we don't want to hold up productivity. We don't want to make it difficult. If it's too difficult for users, they're not going to do it. They're going to find another way to collaborate. Automation, did you want to talk about any of those, Roché? I think, you know, we've spoken about some of these already, but I think it's important that everything that we do is driven by these guiding principles for governance, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that it's actually coming down to make it easy for this end user, and the features that you need, like this external sharing, it's just turned on, so people can just use it depending on their role. So it's not like everybody can just go and misuse this function. You only set it up for the ones that need it, and you have a guide of the way to really assist in this. Like, when are you creating it? How long are you sharing this data? And also creating the visibility. That's a big one. Getting insights in how are you sharing data, with who are you sharing it. So this is very important.
What we're showing is our demonstration environment. We have developed an application as a front-end interface. It's called MyHub, and it sits within Microsoft Teams. So it's available from the App Store. It's a Microsoft Teams application, and it looks a little bit like a chatbot, but it's actually so much more than that. It's a fully interactive interface, and we would generally look at this from a user perspective, where we're not going to show a user hundreds of different services that you can create. We want the user just to see some workspaces that are relevant to them, relevant to their department or their geography. In this instance, we've set up a little bit of a test environment, and we've got about 8 different provisioning services that you can see here. And you know, for me, this all makes sense. If we hover over some of these will all of these will create a team. But some of them are, if you read the description, some of them will create a project team. Some of them will create an internal or external user access team. Some of them are external, some of them are operational. So there is some classification in there that we help the user navigate. But if they're not sure where to go, then we set up a tile and a starting point, which is not sure where to start. So that's a good starting point. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Roché? I think it's a pretty intuitive system, and we want to keep the user within Microsoft Teams. We also have a web interface that does this, but I think it's useful to remain in Teams and operate from there, right?
Exactly, because think about it. The Teams will be your hub to do everything, right? So it makes sense to go from this starting point and also create everything from here, and just shows up in the same environment. And I can imagine if you're new to the company, I mean, you can have all these surfaces, but you don't know Yeah, which service do I need? Can I just go and create external sharing? Is it for the right purpose? So this is the part which I was like actually aiming at, saying like, okay, you can make all these how do you call it? You can set all these guidelines. When are you gonna use Teams? How are you gonna use it? What do you need to check? But I mean, if you're new, it might be you don't know all these things yet. So this not too sure where to start tile, that one may actually make sense because you don't need to know which of these ones you need to choose, right?
Yeah, in a lot of instances, you'd probably simplify this a little bit so that all of these are shielded, and you would just have maybe label this something like create a team. But if we click on there, let's go through a scenario where we're going to provision, and this is not sure where to start. Immediately, it's asking, collaboration will end, or is it an ongoing collaboration? So without calling it out, this is asking the question: is it operational, or is it a project-based team that you want to create? So we've simplified it and we've said yes, collaboration will end, which means it's a project, which means it's going to have a time span and a life cycle, or the ongoing, which is the operational piece. So where do you want to go today, Roché? What's your
let's go for a typical collaboration will end.
Now the user is being asked, should the entire organization have access to this or only specific groups? So this is quite useful in terms of controlling sprawl, controlling information sharing. So we can say, let's say the entire organization for this one, Roché.
So this would be a public versus a private team.
A public team, correct?
Exactly. So you can see how these settings come in play at these questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've already eliminated some of those services that we saw on the landing page, right? So some of them were relating to operational, some of them were relating to public and private. So we know that this is going to be a collaborative ending. So it's project based, and it's going to be a public team. So if we click on submit, then that brings us to one of those services that we created that was being displayed a couple of minutes ago, and it gets to the nitty gritty of the conversation about the resource to be created. And it's going to give us some options on that team.
Yeah, so now the interface is loading all these different options we can select. So yeah, I'm just I'm curious what's it's gonna pop up, because I never kind of choose this option.
Well, the suspense is killing us. Here we go. Right. So what you would normally put in here is the request summary. So if this is going to be a request to a manager, you would put a bit of detail in here to say this team is for project X, whatever, just so that the approver, if there is going to be an approver, knows exactly what it's about. And you can put some additional notes in there as well. There's other options here that you'll note are grayed out. So in this case, the department selection is grayed out. And we've determined that the user is not going to have control over this. We know that this user works in engineering. So we're not giving them the option to change department. We're going to make them create a team that is based on the engineering department policies and rules, right? So the next piece, Roché, is we're going to create a team from scratch or from a template. What do you think we should do?
I would say let's go from scratch. I mean, the template, that is the one where you can simply use the existing teams and use them as a template. And think about all the cool features that are being developed for templates these days. So these are already good to go when they're like fully out there. So that's even cooler, I guess.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. So next piece is privacy. Now, we've already been driven down a certain road where we've called out that this is going to be a public team. So we've taken away that question from the requester. And we've also grayed out outside senders, team classification, and the team design. We don't want the user to have any control over these. We're forcing the creation of the team with these criteria.
Yeah, I like the feature that you can still see these what has been chosen, because it could be like you have understanding of the difference between a public and a private team, and at this point you see like, hey, I'm creating something public, so the whole organization, actually everybody can access this. So you can still cancel now if that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, if you think you're in the wrong place, you can go back and start again. We click on next, and this is the important piece in terms of participation in the team, but also ownership of the team and people who are responsible for it. So we always have the primary contact is important because we need to know who to communicate with when there's actions required on that team. But you'll notice there's an asterisk beside team owner. There always has to be a team owner in this that ultimately will be responsible for the team itself, plus the content within it, and responsible for making decisions about its life cycle or any other management considerations for the team itself. Next piece here, you'll see team members that we can add whoever's going to be part of this team. We can do it manually or do it dynamically. This one is useful for hiding membership or hiding team members who are not members of the team. So that's useful because it just eliminates clutter. Next piece is team policy. So we've set a number of teams policies. The one that we're using here is one that we defined earlier. And again, we're not allowing this user to define team policy. We want this team to adopt that policy and nothing else. So the final step in this process would be team members' permissions. So we've grayed these out. We don't want the user to have control over team's permissions. We've determined this by policy. So you can see that in this case, members are not allowed to delete and restore channels. And they're not allowed to delete their own messages. We asked some questions about metadata. So what is this space for? Is it collaborating externally, sharing details about my department with something else? Let's go with something else. We know that it's a public team, so we can say that it's public. Why not? The next piece is it for a project? That's just a standard. That's a kind of a question that we can put in, but it's not necessary. It's just to help us in the classification of the team.
I think the cool thing is if you would select, is this for a project? No. If you select that option,
yeah,
then obviously
there's a different action. Yeah, so you're changing it from being a operational to a project or a project to an operational. The last cool bit that we're going to look at here is the naming convention piece, right? So we know that our policy has defined this as external project as a suffix for the name of the team. And we're also asking for a department here. So we said this was marketing, I believe. So when I go and create this team, and as I said earlier on, I'm going to call it Stephen's team. What it's going to create is not Stephen's team, but external project _ Stephen's team _ marketing. So suddenly the team name is in convention and makes sense looking in as a data manager to this, right? So you know it's external, you know it's Stephen's team. Okay, that makes some sort of sense. And he's in marketing. So suddenly we know who it is, what the content nature is, and we can get a little bit more intelligence from the team itself, right?
Exactly. So there you go. This was actually it was pretty quick, and everything was said already. So as an end user, you can make a mistake when requesting a team. And I can see you now have it in progress, your request. So even the one who asked for the team, in this case it was you, but you can see in your request part of this Teams app what the status is. So you can see it's in progress, and obviously it needs to be either there's a permission workflow behind it, so it needs to be approved, or it's still in the making. So you have those two options.
Yeah, exactly. In this case, this is going to be an automated approval, I believe. So that's all the user needs to do is go ahead and go through the process of requesting the workspace. It'll be automated, and in the background now, we're satisfying the criteria for policy. We're going and creating the necessary back-end stuff that needs to happen to create that team. So there's a group being created, an Office 365 group. There's a team, there's the associated email address, there's the SharePoint backend. All of that stuff is being handled. And then the policies and the rules that we have in place around that team are also being applied. So in a few minutes, the user will have their team and will be very happy that it's compliant.
Cool. I think we don't have to wait for the team to create it. We can jump to our slides, right?
Take it from us, the team will be created. So key takeaways from today. Automation can help IT scale. So obviously IT is an important part of any business, but I think automation helps the business at large, right? So it's not just IT. It gives time back to end users. It takes them out of the mindset of having to determine what a team should be from a participation, from a data management perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just IT that we help, but we're mentioning IT quite a lot here, but it's so much more than that, right, Roché?
No, exactly. It's all about staying in control, enforcing the policies. It's actually just tying back to these three things I said. When are you going to use this solution, in this case, Teams? When are you going to use it? How are you going to use it? And how are you going to make it easy for everyone, not just the end user to do the right thing, but also for the admins to keep control of it. And this, yeah, keep the environment as clean as possible for everyone to find their information and to keep up with managing it.
Exactly right. So I suppose the burning question for a lot of our viewers today will be, how do I go about doing this? This looks like it's really great, but how long does it take? How difficult is it? How quickly can I get this up and running? So what we have put together at AvePoint is a quick start, right? And you'll be familiar with this if you deal with Microsoft. They also have quick start programs that they run with their partners as well, and we're one of those partners. But what we've loosely defined, and every customer has different requirements. But what we've put together is, I suppose, a work package that will help a business get up and running within 10 working days. Roché, is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Of course, it depends on how much availability you have for the engineers who are going to work at it, or the consultants. But I can say it can be quickly done. Creating these templates, setting the policies to it, and also customizing, say, making some minor tweaks to it, and then obviously setting up the reporting and auditing. Of course, you can go more advanced, but then obviously you would need to invest more time and find out these small tweaks. But the biggest takeaway is not to lose much time in thinking about all these policies, because we can see teams are created as we speak. So you just want to go ahead, have everything in place, and just have it in a controlled way.
Yeah, and to me, governance is a living, breathing thing. It's not something that you set and forget, because policies change, the landscape changes, as we've seen with the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses need to react quickly. So this is something that we don't just provide as software. We provide guidance on how you get the most out of this software, and this quick start will get you up and running very quickly. We have an example of this in the US pretty recently. Where the Metropolitan Council in the US went from 0 to Teams very quickly, because they had to send employees home, and they had to get up and running with governance very quickly, because they're managing things like schools and personal information within the councils themselves. So they couldn't just do what we did, by and large, in the world, where you send everybody home and through Teams at the users and said, off you go, go and collaborate.
You can see, I can see there's a 400% increase after they started using the governance. So if you think about it, that's the same increase. It's like a similar increase with the whole Teams use. So you can probably draw this line back to a lot of companies who have this increase. And at least this company now has a controlled Teams creation, not just the 400% increase with Teams everywhere, data everywhere, no naming convention, which is I think it's a very cool case to check out. The link is there in the bottom. You can download the white papers. So yeah,
and read all about it. It's an interesting story, and we've got so many of those stories as well. It's an interesting time. So as I mentioned, we can do this in about 10 days. Outlining some of the deliverables for that would be setting up a number of services within the service catalog, like you've just seen, in line with some policies. You don't need to overcook it, as you said, Roché. Start simple, and take it from there. So quite often our customers will just start with maybe 10 use cases, 8 to 10 use cases for deploying governance, to enable them to deploy Teams and make sure that Teams is compliant.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, of course, if you If you're not sure how or what, have a talk, get in contact with us. We have been doing this for a lot of companies globally. So even your use case might already be known. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can also help you get started. Really.
Thank you for being a part of the Galactic Collaboration Summit. Join the community and meet in-person world-class Microsoft and MVP speakers this autumn in Wiesbaden, Frankfurt, Germany, with 15 full-day tutorials and over 150 Microsoft 365 and Azure sessions at the combined European Collaboration Summit and European Cloud Summit from 26 to 28 October 2020. Community rocks.